Hey everyone, how's it going? Kevin here with Push to Talk. I wanted to sit down and record a video this evening that's more of like a stream of consciousness, no notes type of video where I'm just sitting down and talking to the camera. And I wanted to do this in lieu of my AEW Rampage recap that I typically shoot on Friday nights. I was busy this last Friday, so I wasn't able to do a recap of Rampage. In fact, it's Saturday night, and I still even haven't watched it yet. That's just because I've been busy with other stuff, aka video games. I'm not gonna lie, but I promise I will watch Rampage tonight. But the reason I didn't shoot my video or watch Rampage last night was because I was actually up at an indie show in San Francisco. And it got me to thinking, I was originally going to sit down and shoot a video kind of like reviewing the indie show, but I decided against that. I wasn't taking notes when I was there, and I was just kind of immersing myself into the event because it's been so long since I've actually been to a pro wrestling show. So what I decided to do instead is sit down here tonight and talk a little bit about what my experience was like going to an indie show after literally not having been to any single pro wrestling show in like 19 months, almost 2 years. So the last pro wrestling show that I went to was NXT TakeOver Portland. And that was a while ago. Like I said, that was like 19 months ago, almost 2 years. And as we know, that was kind of like one of the last big wrestling events to happen before the pandemic hit and before everything was shut down and before we kind of went into that pandemic era of pro wrestling. So I went from going to like indie shows and NXT shows, literally like I would try and hit at least 2 indie shows a month and then hit whatever takeovers happened on the either the West Coast or the middle of the country. So I was going to like maybe a takeover once every 4 months, indie shows, 2 times a month. I went to Double or Nothing. Like I was going hard for a really long time. And once the pandemic hit, like we know what happened. Everything just shut down and wrestling shows just stopped. So, this span of 18 months or 19 months has been a pretty like long stretch for me for not having gone to wrestling shows. Cause like really for me, going to wrestling shows is one of those things that just keeps me going. I work a pretty high stress job, and then with all my responsibilities being an adult, it's so nice just to be able to go into an indie show and just let loose and have fun, or go on a little mini weekend vacation to go to some of the bigger shows like the takeovers or the AEW shows. So this was like a almost new experience for me. I mean, I've been to countless shows, but this was like because it's been so long, it was pretty like different and new. So the show that my brother and I went to was West Coast Pro Wrestling up in San Francisco, South San Francisco, at the venue called the States Room. Typical, pretty small indie show. West Coast Pro seems really awesome. This is actually the first West Coast Pro show that I've ever been to. They've been around for about 3 years or so. I don't know if they're counting the pandemic in that or not. But typically, indie shows in this area up in San Francisco, I would go to APW. That's where I first saw like Will Hobbs, for example, right? He came up through that APW promotion before he was in AEW. So this was kind of like one of my first actual pro wrestling shows in the past 18 months or so. And, I wasn't really sure what to expect going into this thing. I didn't know if it was going to be like you have to show your vaccination status. I didn't know if like we had to wear masks. I was really hesitant to go into the building or go to the show at all because of the pandemic. Like I've still been playing it really safe since this thing hit. Like I literally don't do anything. I work from home. I never go out. So part of me was like kind of reluctant to go. But it has been so long and I kind of really live for going to these things that I figured, screw it. Let's just like take the risk. I'll mask up, I'll social distance, and let's just give this thing a shot and see what it's like. And to my surprise, once I got there, I calmed down quite a bit. And like I looked around the building and everyone was masked. Like literally everybody, obviously except for the wrestlers and the ref. But everyone was being really respectful, wearing the masks. There was probably like between 70 and 100 people there. Not a terribly huge crowd, which made me feel a little bit better as well. The seating was kind of like packed together, so that was a little sketchy. But I figured, you know what, we're all wearing masks. Let's just sit down and enjoy it. So when the first bell hit, they started off one of the first matches. It actually had Carl Fredericks in there, who was a pretty big player here in the independent scene in Northern California. You may have seen him on New Japan Strong or seen some of his work when he was going through the New Japan Dojo. But he was in the first match, which I was really excited to see. And, like, everyone was cheering and having a good time, and I kind of sat there and was like, wait, how am I supposed to react and act at a wrestling show again? Like, this is kind of weird. Like, I feel weird standing up and cheering and chanting because it's been so long. It's like kind of getting over this weird social hump / like COVID paranoia hump to actually start having a good time. So, like, I felt this way, like, pretty much all the way up to the very first intermission. Like, people were jumping out of their seats, they were cheering, there were some pretty great indie names on this card, and I was just kind of sitting there, like, watching. I was enjoying it and clapping, and, I was appreciating the matches and the action, but, like, I couldn't quite get out of my seat, because I was just like, I don't know what to do with my hands. Like, I don't know how to act. This is just so weird. And it took me a while to kind of get over that. And through the intermission, that 15-minute break, I started feeling a little bit better, a little less paranoid about the COVID situation, and like a little bit like I was coming out of my shell almost, and wanting to talk to people and get into it. So when we came back from intermission, we had a great singles match. They kind of did a little no DQ thing. I think the wrestlers were Titus Alexander and Starboy Charlie. If you've never seen Starboy Charlie before, look him up on YouTube. I'm sure there's videos of him on YouTube. He's a young kid. He's a smaller guy, but he can go. He is like the miniature Will Ospreay. This kid's nuts. So once his match hit, and I started seeing him pull off some really great moves, that's when I started to actually be able to, like, feel confident to pop again and actually cheer and start getting into it, So after that, there was a great tag match. A couple of local guys and they were wrestling two bigger indie guys. I forget their names. I'm sorry. I'm not as well versed as indie wrestling as I should be, as much as I used to be even. But bear with me. So after that match, though, which was the main event, and this was really, for me, the whole reason for driving all the way up to San Francisco from my house, which is like an hour and a half drive, half a tank of gas, finishing work at like 4:30 and then immediately hopping in the car and driving all the way up there is a bit of a stretch for me as an old man, but I thought to myself, this match is worth seeing, and it was Daniel Garcia, who we know from AEW, Red Death. I know he wrestled CM Punk on Rampage on Friday. Actually, the same night that it aired, he was wrestling this show in San Francisco, so I thought that was super cool. And he was wrestling Minoru Suzuki, which, I mean, that's Minoru Suzuki. We know all about him, co-founder of Pancrase, New Japan legend, Japanese legend in general. One of my favorite Japanese wrestlers. I couldn't pass this up to see these two go at it in a building whose capacity is like, 100 people or something. I had to roll the dice and go. And as soon as Daniel Garcia came out, that was like one of the first times I was actually up out of the seat and chanting Red Death and getting into it, and really starting to feel way, way better about the situation in general, and feeling less paranoid about the COVID stuff. And then out came Minoru Suzuki, and that place, I mean, there was only 100 people in there or so, but it exploded. Again, everyone was wearing masks, but they were cheering, but that's okay. I mean, it was so fun and so awesome, especially Minoru Suzuki coming out. He came out, timed it to his music perfect. We all fired off and said the Kaze ni Nare, which that was the first thing I really, really shouted for the whole night, It took me that long to kind of like not worry so much about being around people after COVID. And these guys just put on an incredible match. It was a barn burner. They were slapping the crap out of each other. Really snug submissions, great storytelling. It was a typical strong style match, which was really fun and refreshing to see. I thought Daniel Garcia's chest was going to cave in multiple times. Minoru Suzuki was getting great pops from the crowd. He's in there having fun. You can tell he's kind of joking around at some point, and he's doing all of the signature things that Suzuki does that makes him awesome. And like during this match is when I felt like, okay, for me, live wrestling is back. That was the moment where I was like, okay, not only do I feel way more comfortable about this whole situation, especially with everyone wearing masks, but like I've got the bug again to want to start going to all of the wrestling shows that I possibly can. This promotion, West Coast Pro, they've already got another show coming up, I think on November 12th, and Tomohiro Ishii is going to be at that event, which is like even more awesome and crazy, and I have to go to that. And then early next month, I'm going to a New Japan show in San Francisco at the at the San Jose Civic Auditorium. John Moxley's gonna be there, so I was feeling nervous and apprehensive about going back to wrestling shows, but after like remembering how much fun they really are and how important to me that these wrestling shows are, and like how happy they make me and how excited they make me, and like knowing also that everyone's wearing masks, everything feels generally pretty safe. Everyone seems to be, washing their hands and not doing anything, crazy. It makes me feel a lot better and just wanting to go to these shows again. So, like, I wanted to sit down and talk a little bit about my experience going to my first wrestling show in 18 months, my first post-pandemic wrestling show, and, like, hopefully, build up some confidence in my fellow wrestling fans to help them feel a little bit better about going to a show after so long. It's understandable that we're apprehensive. But look at AEW TV, look at WWE. People are back. They're having a good time. They're having fun, and things seem generally pretty safe. I haven't heard of any big, huge outbreaks coming from wrestling shows. So, like, knowing that too, I feel better going to these shows. And like, I can't go another 18 months without going to these shows. I can't go another 2 or 3 months, honestly, without going to wrestling shows. Like, I'm already like jacked and ready to just jump in the car, drive up to the city, and see this New Japan show already. I mean, even earlier today, I was looking at the West Coast Pro like Eventbrite page, just ready to buy those front row tickets for the next indie show that comes up. Also really, really can't wait for the fact that like Double or Nothing is right around the corner, and as we know, that typically would take place in Vegas, which is pretty close to me, just a short plane ride away. So hey, fingers crossed, man. If they announce that one, I am buying a ticket and a plane ticket, and I am going, no questions asked, to that guy there. So I'm super amped to get back to wrestling shows. And before I close out this video too, there was one more point that I forgot to add here that I really wanted to talk about, is like, especially when it comes to these independent wrestling shows post-pandemic, I think it's really important that we do show up to these again, and we do spend our money to buy the ticket and buy merch, because like these wrestlers, these guys have not been putting on shows for the past 19 months. I mean, that's an income stream lost for them. And that sucks. I mean, especially when these guys are so impassioned and they're out there putting their bodies and lives on the line to entertain us in these tiny little indie shows. Like, I couldn't imagine what that was like for them. I mean, shoot, I'm just saying here as a fan, it was hard not to be able to go to shows for 18 months. As a performer, I bet it drove these men and women absolutely insane. And it must have been absolutely terrifying to think like they may never be able to do this again. But luckily, it's back. So I think we need to show our support to these wrestlers, both through spirit and financially as well as just turning out and having a good time. and trying not to be too nervous about our surroundings while still being smart and being safe. I do think that's really, really important. But, the point being of this video is let's all go back to the shows. Let's enjoy wrestling again. Let's support independent wrestling specifically. And, if you haven't been to a show yet, since the pandemic, I'm not gonna lie, it feels a little weird, and it feels a little scary at first, but as you heard in my story, I warmed up to it pretty quick and I started having a great time. So thanks so much for watching this video. It was kind of a weird one, but if it was something that I wanted to get out there, and get off my chest and to share and hopefully inspire others to just go to these darn shows again. So please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You can follow me on Instagram. I am Push2Talk1. I'm going to go watch Rampage right now, finally, almost 24 hours late, which is crazy. And if there's anything that stands out to me there, I might do an extra little video. But tomorrow, I think I'm going to sit down and record another video in my series of the best AEW wrestlers. So please stay tuned for that one, and I will see you all very, very soon.